The A4Q AI portfolio brings together 3 certifications, each designed to strengthen your understanding of AI from a different perspective. You can start with A4Q AI Essentials to gain a clear understanding of how AI works and how to apply it ethically and effectively. Explore A4Q AI Foundation to deepen your knowledge of AI methods, risk awareness and quality assurance, bridging the gap between innovation and responsibility. And finally, the new A4Q Certified Professional for AI Compliance, a specialized program focused on the EU Artificial Intelligence Act. Here, you'll explore risk classification, governance, conformity assessment, and post-market monitoring, all the key elements organizations need to stay compliant in the new regulatory era. Explore the A4Q AI portfolio and take your next step toward AI you can trust.
Hello and welcome everybody to this session of the A4Q Testing Summit 2026. Today we have here a very, very special guest. Welcome, Erik Van Veenendaal. I cannot imagine that anybody doesn't know you. You're an author. You did so much work for the testing community. You're honored as ISTQB fellow, as an Eurostar testing excellence, and wrote books and articles. You are on stage and you did so much for the testing community. So I'm very happy that you are here now in this session. And your session will be about improve your testing with TMMi and AI. A very interesting combination, and really looking forward for this speech and this talk now. But before we start, let's just for the audience, you can vote for the best speaker and best presentation on the website. And also don't hesitate to ask questions during the speech in the chat. We will deal with them at the end of the session. And now I have to say, welcome, Erik, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Richie, for the wonderful presentation. So I'm going to talk about TMMi. Basically, I think most of you know about TMMi, but I'll do a short introduction. I will talk a little bit about how to use it, how to apply it successfully. And also I will talk about version 2 of TMMi, which is coming very soon. And finally, I will also address, important of course in the context of this conference, I will talk about how does TMMi now relate to AI, and especially of course how does TMMi version 2 relate to AI. Okay, so let's get started here. This is who I am, but I think we had a brilliant introduction already by Richie, so that's it. First of all, what is TMMi? Going back in time, if you want. When TMMi was founded, as you can see, almost more than 20 years ago now already, there were 2 main objectives. One was to develop the TMMi model, so a test improvement model, but important, also a second one, to build a framework for assessments. That means if you do an assessment in China or in Germany or in the UK or in US or Brazil or wherever, they are all the same. That means having that framework in place as well allows the TMMi Foundation to certify companies that comply to the regulations, to the rules of the TMMi model. The first version was published in 2010, and I'm focusing on this because you can see a difference of 5 years. This means TMMi is not a, let's say, quickly developed model. A lot of research over a period of 5 years, funded by the EU, based on ISO standards, IEEE standards, ISTQB syllabi, best practice surveys, all the like. We finally, 5 years later, published version 1. It's an independent model, meaning it can be used with all kinds of testing methods, but also various lifecycle models. Initially, TMMi was, let's say, marketed from the UK. But of course, you cannot conquer the world from the UK. So we started a number of years ago by establishing so-called TMMi local chapters. I think today there are 33 local chapters covering 90 plus countries. So they basically do local marketing. They ensure there's local training provider, there's a local assessment community, there's translations going on, these kind of things. And based on that, I think we became very, very successful. And today, TMMi is the world leading model for test process improvement. I'm not just saying that. There's an IEEE research that shows that. And you can see also on the graph, that shows in our assessments on a yearly basis, it's a growing uptake. If we look at the model, I always say, okay, it's 5 levels, process areas per levels is pretty straightforward. But for me, there are 2 views here. There's one view, which is, let's say, the test engineering view. It's a document with practices, with goals, with examples, with references, a big document, 225 pages that helps you to do test improvement. That's important. But probably as important is another view. That's the view of managers. To me, one of the strong points of the TMMi is that you can explain TMMi to management in only a few minutes by showing them picture. They don't care about the examples, the practices, the goals, whatever. Oh, this is what it is. 5 levels? And we achieve each level? Yes. Because I've learned over the years, if you want to be successful in test improvement, it's not just about management commitment. You need someone from management to be a leader that guides this, has real commitments. So if you look at TMMi, I always say there are 2 views, the engineering view on one hand, and the leader who has this view on this picture. And both are very, very important. And talking about the business and the leaders, I always talk about why TMMi. And I see people posting because it's measured and it's defined. Who cares? Ultimately, it's about business benefits. And you can see here 2 researches, surveys done by the TMMi Foundation and some results. 94%, 89%, let's say 90% of the companies doing TMMi are reporting benefits in terms of product quality. 90%, that's a huge percentage. And of course, it means different things for different companies. Sometimes it's less number of risks or less defects. That's it. And the same, and I was surprised by that, is about 70% plus also report we are getting more efficient. Increased test productivity, streamlined processes. And these, to me, are the things you need to communicate to your leaders, to managers. This is why you do TMMi. And comparing that, and I'm not trying to be negative here, but just comparing these numbers with, let's say, Agile, because we all move to Agile. And if you look at the state of the Agile report, and there are other benefits from Agile, it says 37% of the companies doing Agile actually are reporting product quality benefits. And the same with DevOps. The change failure rate is still huge for many users. So I think the numbers of TMMi are just very, very impressive. I personally don't know of any other tool, method, checklist, whatever you have, that brings these type of benefits. So I think this is a very important thing to take already. This is why you're doing it. So if you start talking TMMi to your leaders, to your managers, use this slide, use the information. This is what TMMi is all about. The leadership or management view, if you want. And here are some examples from the finance domain. As you can see, a bank and 22% increase in finding defects. Another bank, defects to production decreased by 15%. A stock exchange company, many more early defects. And you can see all said here, they are TMMi level 3 companies. And this is important. There is no need, and we'll come back to that later on. There is no need to go all the way to the TMMi level 5 before you can get real business benefits. For many companies that adopt the TMMi, going to level 3 only is enough. We'll talk about it later on a little bit more. If we blow up, just to give you a little bit of meat, I would say, on level 2, what you see is, I always call them basic practices. They are, I think, project-oriented or team-oriented process areas. It's about test planning. And test planning is not about writing a test plan, it's about upfront thinking. What's the test approach? What are the risks we're covering? How much time do we need? Monitoring control. Monitoring defects. Monitoring definition of done. Monitoring progress. Taking actions when we deviate. Test design. Having test conditions in place, test cases, traceable to requirements, executing them, writing or generating test logs, and finally in an environment that looks a bit like production, that is clearly managed. If you think about this, these are very basic things. However, and I've done quite a few TMMi assessments, always, for the companies I'm visiting, initially there are shortcomings even at TMMi level 2. So the majority is still a TMMi level 1, which is the free level company, which is to some extent sad, but also the reality. There's a 5th, as you can see here on top, process area, which is called test policy and strategy. And this is the one also for management again. What you want is that management, and this is important, that you start discussing with management things about policy, a test policy. And I'll show you examples. You can't all read them, that's okay. But I'm trying to say is here, you want to talk with management and say, okay, is testing a career path, yes or no? Which quality characteristics are important for the organization? What are essential parts of our process? What's the role of test automation? What's the role today of AI? What are we trying to achieve through TMMi? What are our goals? How are we going to measure that? So we get, if you want, a clear mission, a clear view, aligned throughout the company. So TMMi level 2 for me, basic level, with 4 team-based process areas, with practices, with goals, and 1 which is much more managerial, the leading one. What are we trying to achieve? Why are we doing this? And hopefully you're already getting the point that the business benefits, the leaders, they make the difference. Having a clear policy, why we're doing is important. TMMi is not just an engineering tool. We need this, I would say, in one of the next slides. So let's have a look at this. The structure of TMMi, very, very briefly, because we could talk about this for an hour easily, but 5 minutes only or 2 minutes only. We have maturity levels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Level 1 is for free, so you're all level 1. Congratulations. On each maturity level, we have so-called process areas. We saw them just for level 2, 5 process areas. Each process area has what we call goals, improvement goals, things that we would like to achieve. For instance, on test planning, we have a goal on risk analysis, product risk analysis. We have a goal on defining a test approach. We have a goal on test estimation. We have a goal on documenting that in a test plan. By the way, that could be a one-page test plan only, something that you put on the wall near the task board, and there is commitment. And then, next level down, are the practices, all details, the examples, and so on and so on. What is important to understand here is this level is mandatory. This level is, this is what TMMi asks. The level down is, okay, these are examples. This could be the way to do it. If you do it differently, I don't care. The goal is do a product risk analysis. The goal is define a test approach. So don't use the practices as some people do as a checklist. I have to do all these things, because then we end up with a very theoretical model. So think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. That's the main thing of this, I would say, model. Okay. Now, if we start, and this is more like closing the first session, introducing TMMi to you. If we start using TMMi, and again, this is something I talk about a lot, and sometimes longer than one slide, but a few, I would think, hints. There is no need when you start using TMMi to do a formal assessment and spend a lot of money. Start with an informal assessment, or even, there's a tool available for that, a lightning scan. Typically doing that and only looking at TMMi level 2 and level 3 gives you enough, let's say, action items, shortcomings, less strong points, that you can say, okay, we can work on that. So forget about the big, huge assessments, save the money. When doing TMMi, always think business added value. We have a policy. And the policy says, please, these are the things we are trying to achieve. So every time you, let's say, do an improvement, think, does it have added value in the context of our test policy, in the context of our test strategy? That should be the goal. And don't go and interpret every practice or whatever. No, that's the way. So look at the goals, as I said already, and especially look at the practices and say, how should we do this in our context? Because we are DevOps, we have only so many teams, or you have many teams. For whatever reason, we are a government, we have compliancy relations, I don't know. Look for what's the best way to do it. Think about, what does this practice mean for us? And the nice thing about this, there are 2 guidelines available freely from the TMMi website. And one says, if you're working in an agile context with agile teams, this could be a way to interpret many practices for you. There's not a guide, which has been released, I think, December last year, so it's pretty recent. Same, but then for DevOps. So you work in a DevOps context. How should we read, interpret the goals and practices working in DevOps context? These are very popular documents in huge demand and should be used, I would say, in conjunction with the overall TMMi model document. Another thing using TMMi, I think, keep it simple. But keeping it simple is not always that simple. What I mean by that is write process descriptions, how to, on 1 or 2 pages only. Don't have long, nobody reads them. At the same time, think, where can I develop a template? Usually people like templates much better than processes. Maybe a tool, a checklist. And one of my favorites is a best practice library. What I mean by that is, suppose we're doing or improving test design and we're using methods for that, classification trees, whatever. Then writing a process description, how to do it, great. Having a template, how to write test designs, better. But some good examples of projects already done it, That's what people really need. So the best practice library is something that is part of, for me, is on the process side. And we have processes, sure, but at the same time, get people with the right knowledge and skills. And preferably as workshops, not just as training like ISTQB, because that's a one-way street, and that's, to me, the theory which is needed, by the way. But if you say, hey, we have a process and have a workshop, this is how it should be applied in our teams, that's what people like. So address people in parallel and focus on that. It's communication, it's marketing, it's convincing people, and repeat that as part of onboarding. And when you use TMMi, and quite often also in courses, I have to say this, let's forget about 4 and 5, please. We are all, or nearly all, TMMi level 1. Unfortunately, if we're honest. That means TMMi levels 2 and also 3 have enough or more than enough challenge. So here are some, I would say, guides when you start thinking about TMMi. And of course, we talked about already, get someone from management involved, get leadership involved, because that supports the process. That supports the road of becoming TMMi level 2 or 3. 2 or 3 requires dedication. Now, as I said already, we've released version 1 in 2010. Thereafter, I think 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 if I'm good. But a main update is in progress, which is called TMMi version 2. It's the result of approximately 2 years of, let's say, hard work. And it's expected in, it says here on the slide, maybe you read it, June, but of course, it's a project, so you run late. But I think it's expected in summer, July, August are more, if you want, realistic. Some of the things that have been changed or added or removed are on this slide. First of all, and again, I'm going back to the same thing we talked about earlier, emphasizing business value. So for every process area, for every goal, we've described, so what should be the added value when you practice this in your organization? What should be the business value? A second major update, of course, Agile and DevOps have been developed over the last few years. So the model is now blended with all kinds of Agile practices and examples, DevOps practices and examples. It's now embedded, if you want, much more in the model. Leaning. When doing this, we had a team of, I don't know, 7, 8 people, I think. We also asked the question to everyone, so which practices which are currently in the model from 2010 are not so relevant anymore in today's test engineering world? And we got all kinds of ideas on goals, on practices, on process area even. So the model has been, if you want, made more lean. As a result, the number of pages has gone down by about 30%. So there is, if you want, a different approach. For those who are in detail know about TMMi, there are what I call generic goals and generic practices. I'm not going to go into detail too much about this one, but they have been removed, and there's different solutions to that. I think it makes the model even more simple to use. PPT framework, I'll come back to this one on the next slide because I have a slide on that. We also did, and also we'll come back to that later on, is we looked at AI and said, how can AI, Gen AI practices, AI models, support the various TMMi process areas? So there is now a distinct link from TMMi to AI. Something which is also, I think, new is quality engineering. And we also looked at what are quality engineering practices and how do they map to TMMi. And although TMMi is a test model, test improvement model, I've learned through the quality engineering mapping that the way TMMi defines testing is pretty broad. But again, it's in the model. And finally, again, we emphasize in TMMi version 2, it is not a checklist. Work from the policy, work from business value, work from the goals. As I said already, the PPT framework is also part of TMMi version 2. Now, the PPT framework comes from the business domain, so not so much from IT, and basically says if you want to change something, so change management, there are always 3 things that matter. You need to define how you want to work, what the changes are, so the process. You also need people who understand the process, who have the right knowledge and skills, and you can't do one without the other. I remember on the slides I showed you using TMMi, I said, you need a process, but also workshops with people. And of course, in the people side, this is also about ISTQB, this conference, you can see here, we have ISTQB, but also you can see, of course, the T-shaped tester. And also we can see here the leader. These are all aspects of changing something, and the people aspect. And finally, or thirdly, better, we have technology. And translating technology to, let's say, testing, we talk about test automation. And of course, today also about artificial intelligence. So basically looking at this model framework, we can say, hey, we have a test process, a test improvement model. This is TMMi. But to do TMMi successfully, we also need the people aspect, good test engineers, leadership, who have knowledge about the process, who understand testing in general, ISTQB issues, and we need support from technology. But there are 3 different aspects. So TMMi doesn't embed people, it doesn't embed AI or test automation, but it does provide you with the right link. Because you can see here, only having people in place, I think this happens a lot. Then we're in a hero culture, focusing too much on test automation, artificial intelligence, but without knowing what you're doing. You have a lot, but it doesn't make much sense. Only process, probably also not the best idea. It's a combination of these 3. That's the philosophy of TMMi that makes things successful. Now let's look a little more about what I said already is, so what about AI and TMMi, and dive into that technology aspect if you want. When we talk about TMMi and AI, we have, you might say, 2 distinct views again. And the first one is AI can be about, or TMMi can be about, testing AI systems. So not using AI during test design or whatever. It's about how to test the AI systems and what does that mean for TMMi. So again, we developed a guide saying how to interpret the goals, the standard practice for TMMi when you are testing AI systems. For us, for instance, high quality characteristics. Sure, there are let's say the standard ones, but also now we have new ones. Flexibility, autonomy, bias, transparency. We still have, let's say, exit criteria, but typically they are different. Precision, recall, F1 score. We have techniques, but not the standard ones. Metaformic testing, A/B, back to back. And of course, we developed this, but interesting to say, of course, the TMMi Foundation has a lot of knowledge. People in TMMi Foundation. In this case, we work very closely with those who also developed the ISTQB syllabus and an AI United syllabus. to make the model say, okay, this is what AI testing is, and how can we use TMMi in that context? So this is also available if you are interested on the TMMi website. Bringing me to the, let's say, last part. So TMMi AI, using AI in testing. So using AI together with TMMi to change something to get better. First of all, and we talked about this in the PPT framework already, this, to me, to TMMi Foundation, is, I'm not going to say just, because it's wow, but it's a technology. This is important to understand. What you don't need or you don't want is without process, without people who know what they're doing, to start applying AI. It will give you a lot of, let's say, test cases, but you have no clue what you're doing. So using AI, and we can talk about AI much more, but I think there are a few things here to say already. Using AI means you need a certain level of test process maturity. If you want to use it for test design, you need to understand test design. If you want to use it for, let's say, security testing, you need to understand security testing. And remember what I said earlier, those with TMMi assessments, we discovered that many are still TMMi level 1. So you could here ask the question mark, are they ready, question mark, for AI? Also, using AI is much better if you have your own historical data. If you want to improve your estimations, you can ask AI to do some estimation, but if you say, hey, here are data from the past that we actually used and it gets much better. So we have technology, we have the process, and of course, again, we have the people. We need people to understand, who can evaluate, who can review the output of AI. And today, I think we have people who've done it before without AI. I wonder how that will happen, let's say, a number of years from today, if we're only using AI. What I mean by that is, if you've done a test design, and I give you a test design from AI, you can probably review it very well. If you've never done a test design by hand, then reviewing it can become difficult. So technology, we need other things as well. And I'm very much a practical guy. That means, as an example, for instance, on how does it map? Let's say we have a process area, level 2, test design execution. And yes, there are some great, I think, AI applications there. I like to use it for saying, here's a user story, or user stories, here's use cases, use technique ABC, here's a template you have to use, here are some criteria to do it, please generate my test cases. And you get a great, let's say, test design. And then you can, of course, evaluate, and typically you'll find some things wrong. You will mean, hey, there's some domain cases I want to add, or things like that, but it saves you a lot of effort. And the same with test analysis. In test analysis, you're trying to look at the test basis, user story, interface descriptions, whatever, and say, is it all clear? Is it testable? Is it unambiguous? And again, you can ask AI, hey, have a look. But if you provide them with clear rule set, how you would distinct let's say, a critical defect in the test basis from a minor, it gives you a lot of good, I would say, feedback. Test planning, the same one. If you're thinking about risk analysis, you can ask him, where are the risks? But again, here's historical data. If you say, these are some defects from the past, it's much better to give you defects. So we have this link, if you want. So in the TMMi version 2, which I promised should be there, well, not any day now, but in summer, we basically have a large section which says, okay, these are the process areas in TMMi version 2. These are the goals. So we have, I think, 16 process areas and many more goals, of course. And then per goal, it is stated, and what could TMMi mean in this context of this goal? So basically what you're saying is, hey, if we are changing, if we are making steps in the right direction, and we got test design, as an example again, under control, we have people who understand this, then we can also look at the same time, okay, how can we use Gen AI here? So there is, I think, a number of pages in the document, but especially per goal, per level, is defined. Bringing me to my last slide, and this is my, I think, favorite saying of what I hear today. I'm a big fan of test automation. I'm a fan of AI. I like it. I use it, I think, on a daily basis. But if you, meaning the people, don't have the knowledge and skills, in this context, again, master-degree can play a role. If you don't know what you're doing, don't have a process, then please don't do it with AI. And of course, as I said already, follow me or follow the TMMi Foundation, and you'll hear more very, very soon about TMMi version 2 to be released in June, July. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erik, for this presentation. And I totally relate to the last slide here when we have to take care about what we are doing with AI. And I'm really looking forward to see TMMi version 2. And thank you so much for the presentation. And we have some questions now for you. The first one is, what are biggest markets for TMMi? In which domains do you make the largest uptake?
That's a good question. Yeah, we learned from that as well. Traditionally, and traditionally means until, let's say, a few years ago, we saw two main markets all the time. One was, let's say, the finance domain. I think in the finance domain, there is a lot of compliance regulations. So that was so banks, trust companies, stock exchange, insurance companies. That was a big one. The second one, IT development or testing companies. They may also use it for the wrong reason, being marketing. That's of course less an issue with finance. But recently, and I mean recently, the last 2 years, we saw a huge growth in government bodies. So ministries, the Home Office from the UK, Ministry of Energy from Saudi Arabia, Foreign Affairs in Holland is doing it. So there's a lot of things happening in the government agencies. But again, if you think about it, trust in public IT systems is a big thing. So I understand this is happening, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And the next question we got, you mentioned that TMMi version 2 will be released as a package. Can you elaborate on this, please?
What I mean by that is, of course, there's an ecosystem in TMMi Foundation. There's a lot of documents going around. There's assessments documents. There is a training syllabus like A4Q has. There are exams. There are a submission, whatever. If you just release TMMi version 2 without updating all the rest of the documents, then of course it doesn't fit anymore. So we have decided to, but that's a whole lot of documents. So what will happen is we'll have in the summer a first release that will be TMMi version 2, so the model. At the same time, we are updating some slide updates, the assessment framework to be aligned with that. We're also updating the TMMi professional syllabus, so the syllabus for learning TMMi and the exam. And that's going to be the first package, I think, in my home. And then we have another set of documents which will come later, which are less essential. So it's not just one document all the time. There's going to be 3 packages, I think, over time in this year to be released.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, thank you. And now we have, as it has to be AI questions too. Will using of AI be part of the formal and or informal TMMi assessments?
Well, that's a very interesting question, I think. Maybe at some time, I would say. I think it's certainly something which we can look into, because I very much like the question. I like the idea very much. But as I said already, TMMi has now the philosophy to follow the PPT framework. TMMi takes care of the process side, and AI is technology. So if you look at the requirements for formal or informal TMMi assessments, it shall state, please look at the processes of the organization. However, some of the processes could be embedded in the AI application. So I think you would have a very clear link there. And also, I think if you, even if it's not, you could, a good assessor, you could say, okay, we would like to assess TMMi level 2 for us, but can you also look at the same time of where can we actually use, let's say, AI beneficially? So formally, the answer is no. I think in practice, there's going to be a roadmap towards something which will happen in the future.
Yeah.
Interesting future, I think, in this case.
Yeah. I think too. Yeah. And another question about AI: is there a difference between using AI at lower TMMi maturity levels or using AI at higher TMMi maturity levels?
Good question again. Good AI questions. If you look at, well, you can't, but if you look at later on at TMMi version 2 and look at the type of, let's say, AI support provided at, let's say, level 2 or level 3 versus the type of AI support at, let's say, 4 and 5, which are different TMMi maturity levels, I think, and this is, of course, a very generic, broad answer, but there are specific, I think, maybe some issues there somewhere. But typically what you see is using AI, lower maturity levels will focus on efficiency and doing things smarter, let's say. If you look at higher levels, where you talk about defect prevention, measurements, quality control, I think it becomes different. Then AI would much more be prediction, would support decision-making. So I think we get more advanced, if you want, applications of AI at that level. So there is a difference. I think if you look at it very broadly, of course, you can debate that, but generically, if you look at it, efficiency is the first step, doing things smarter, quicker. But once you get more knowledge on AI, but also you're growing your maturity, you will use it for different reasons. And I think then you get into a decision support system, predicting, it becomes more interesting, even if you want, or more intelligent.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Yeah, that were the questions for this session. Erik, thank you very much for your presentation here. And for you, the audience here, I hope you enjoyed the session, and the conference is nearly over. So the summit is nearly over. So I hope you have enjoyed it. Don't forget to vote for the best speaker and best presentation, and have a good day.
Thank you, Richie.
What a great conference. 75 sessions, 29 countries, 3 languages, and the shared belief quality is so important, especially now in the era of AI. I want to thank every single speaker who shared their knowledge, every panelist who spoke, and every one of you who showed up, asked questions, took notes, or simply listened. You made this summit what it was, a great quality conference. Take what inspired you today and carry it out into your teams tomorrow. Share that knowledge, what you get here, with the people you surround in your daily projects. And wherever you are heading now, whether it is breakfast, lunch, or dinner, go to bed or to the next meeting, have safe travels, take care of each other, and stay curious. Thank you. See you the next time. Your Richie.
The A4Q AI portfolio brings together 3 certifications, each designed to strengthen your understanding of AI from a different perspective. You can start with A4Q AI Essentials, to gain a clear understanding of how AI works and how to apply it ethically and effectively. Explore A4Q AI Foundation to deepen your knowledge of AI methods, risk awareness and quality assurance, bridging the gap between innovation and responsibility. And finally, the new A4Q Certified Professional for AI Compliance, a specialized program focused on the EU Artificial Intelligence Act. Here, you'll